Hey there, Parker Reed here, and welcome to PR Media, your home for everything movies and music through my eyes. And today we're going to take another look at the world of 4K Blu-ray, and I'm going to name 13 releases I didn't think needed to come out at all. Now, there are a lot of reasons why something didn't need to come out in 4K. Either it's just an upscale, the movie's just bad, or the Blu-ray release was already great, or there's a host of other reasons. But the first movie up on this list that didn't need a 4K release is Downsizing, starring Matt Damon. And the reason this didn't need a 4K release is that a trash movie. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, one of the worst theater experiences I've ever had, and it's on my shelf just to remind me how good other movies are. The next movie up that didn't need a 4K release is none other than The Emoji Movie. And the reason The Emoji Movie didn't need a release is just like Downsizing, it's not a good movie at all. And the reason I actually bought it and have it on my shelf is because I think the cover's kind of cool. There's like a glitter effect going on. And also when I have people over and they see my big collection, they look and see The Emoji Movie, we can have a good laugh about it. It's a decent talking piece. It's not something I'll ever return to though. A horror movie that didn't need a 4K release is none other than the classic Sam Raimi directed The Evil Dead. And the reason The Evil Dead didn't need a 4K release is because it was shot on such low quality, on such low quality film, that the transfer is just not that great. You can see all the cheesy special effects and the cheesy acting. The Blu-ray release was fine of this one. It didn't need a 4K release. Obviously it's a big draw because it's one of the most popular horror movies and horror franchises of all time, but I don't think The Evil Dead needed a 4K release. Blu-ray would have been just okay. Next up on our list of 13 movies that didn't need a 4K release is Gremlins, another classic from the 80s, and the reason this didn't need one is because of the product that came out. This pretty much looks exactly like the Blu-ray. There's not a lot of difference, and you'll get the Blu-ray for like $5 as opposed to 20 or 25 like I paid for the Steelbook. And Steelbook looks cool, so if that's worth $25 to you, cool. If not, stick with your Blu-ray, it'll be totally fine. Gremlins is a good movie, but didn't need a 4K release if they were going to put out this quality of a film. Next up on our list is the first animated title in the list, and that is Hellboy's animated double feature, Sword of Storms and Blood and Iron. And the reason this didn't need one is no one really knew this existed anyway. They were TV features, they didn't come out theatrically or anything, and I understand why the Guillermo del Toro films came out on 4K. Those look great and they're pretty good movies. And even the reboot recently, I understand why that got a 4K release, but this one's kind of baffling. It can't really be called a cash-in because it didn't make much cash, but I added it to the 4K Hellboy collection just because I really enjoy Hellboy. I don't really understand this one, so if someone could let me know why this got a 4K release, let me know. Next up is another film that's so bad I don't understand why it got a 4K release, is Vin Diesel's The Last Witch Hunter. And The Last Witch Hunter it's trash. I remember I saw it on TV once and I thought it was trash, and it was cheap at Best Buy one day, I think, and I think that's why I picked it up. And I'm kind of a 4K completist. I'd like to have as many films in the format as I can. I'm not going to return to this one anytime soon. I think Vin Diesel's not a very good actor to begin with, so put him in the lead of any movie, it's going to be not much of a draw for me. Last Witch Hunter, don't pick it up unless it's like $5 or $10. You're not missing much here. In my opinion, 4K Ultra HD really shines in the sci-fi genres, the action formats, and comedies don't generally need that high of resolution. They generally don't have that much special effects, and it's just pretty much clarity at that point. So a movie that didn't really need a 4K release from the comedy genre is Kevin Hart's Night School. And Night School it's a fine, disposable comedy, not kind of romantic comedy, but mostly just a straight comedy. It's a nice, fun 1 or 2 time watch. Have a girlfriend over, have a friend over, get a good laugh or two, but it's not one you're going to want to revisit every year, every other year, and to refresh your memory on it. It doesn't need a 4K release, and not a lot of Kevin Hart movies even got a 4K release, so I don't know why this one did. There's some sentimental attachment because I saw it on a bunch of billboards when I was in Los Angeles a few years ago. But it's just a fine film. It's not bad, but it doesn't really utilize 4K to its fullest potential, so not really sure why it came out. Next up, we have a release that didn't utilize 4K to its fullest potential. That's Pan's Labyrinth. Now, I was really excited for this release because Pan's Labyrinth is one of my favorite movies in this genre, and I think it really could have utilized 4K to its fullest extent and used high dynamic range most of all, because there's a lot of deep blacks and a lot of dark imagery in this film. But the Blu-ray Criterion Collection release of it that I had previously was almost flawless, and when I watched this, I couldn't notice an uptick in clarity or sound or HDR or anything. It didn't really seem that different from the Blu-ray. I paid like 25 bucks for it, so I'm like, why did I spend the time to upgrade it? And the cover art's not as good either. So this didn't really need to come out in 4K after I watched it. If you have the Criterion release of Pan's Labyrinth, stick with that. It's a great film. I highly recommend you watch it, but unless you're a 4K purist, grab the Blu-ray if you can get it for cheaper than this, and I think it'll just be alright. Up next, we have the first of 2 films starring The Rock, and that is The Scorpion King. It's not a good movie. I don't know why people are still paying attention to it. It's kind of a cult classic now that The Rock is such a famous actor. But the effects in this movie, 4K does not do them any favors. They were bad on Blu-ray, they were bad on DVD, they were bad on VHS. So I don't know why we want to continue to highlight that, but they did anyway. I'm sure some people bought it. That's probably why it came out. The Scorpion King, why did it get a 4K release? Not sure. Have you ever watched Die Hard, the action classic? Have you ever wondered what it would be like starring The Rock and not nearly as good? Then you got Skyscraper. Skyscraper came out a few years ago and stars The Rock, and it's basically just Die Hard. You don't need it. Buy Die Hard. It's better. Don't buy this movie. Don't recommend it. Don't do it. I've said it once or twice, and I'll say it again. Don't buy it. And just like Night School previously on this list, the next one up is Step Brothers. And Step Brothers is a good film. I enjoy it. It's funny. Obviously, Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly, hilarious together. But 4K doesn't do anything for Step Brothers. When you watch the Blu-ray, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, I wish I saw even more pixels of Will Ferrell playing the drum set. It's not needed. The Catalina wine mixer looks great in 4K, but don't bother. Up next is a So Bad It's Good movie starring Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. We got Van Helsing. Van Helsing is a good, guilty watch. It's fun, it's kind of funny, but the special effects in this movie do not lend themselves to the 4K very well. They're older, in the mid-2000s, so it doesn't look that great. And if they would have spent a little bit more time with it, maybe rendered them at a higher resolution, it might have looked better, but it doesn't. And the Blu-ray looks fine, so you're not missing a lot here. It's not a classic movie. It might be a cult classic now, but yeah, don't bother with the 4K release of Van Helsing. It's more expensive by 3 or 4 times than the normal Blu-ray. Stick with your Blu-ray copy. But if you're a big fan of Hugh Jackman or want to see some cheese on 4K, I guess I'd recommend it, but still didn't need a 4K release. Last up on my list of 13 4K releases that didn't need to come out is another comedy head-scratcher starring Ryan Reynolds. You know it, you kind of love it, maybe, is National Lampoon's Van Wilder. Now, Van Wilder is a decent comedy, but the Blu-ray didn't look good at this, and the 4K doesn't look as good as the Blu-ray does. It's a really bad transfer, so it didn't need to come out. And did we really need this in 4K anyway, even if it would have looked amazing? Not a lot of people talk about or remember this film nowadays, so it did not need a 4K release. It's a decent movie in my opinion, but it came out at the same time as Avengers Infinity War, so it kind of got overshadowed there, and not many people have returned to it. It's been discounted at like 10 or $5 most of its life cycle. So don't pick up Van Wilder. It didn't need a 4K release, and it's the last up on my list. Thank you so much for watching my list of 13 movies that did not need a 4K release. My name is Parker Reed. You've been watching PR Media. Keep supporting physical media like 4K releases, and I'll see you next time. See ya.